I teach in Link Home Study program. Link Home Study is a government-funded language program where students study completely online. Once a week, I meet with them for a 30-minute individual class, and throughout the week, they complete their language assignments using a learning management system. This program is CLB-based, and when students enroll in the program, they can choose the focus skills they want to improve on, whether it's listening, speaking, reading, or writing, or a combination of those. And as an instructor, I work with them towards achieving those CLB competencies in their target skill area and level. I also facilitate online workshops for newcomers to Manitoba at English Online. I love everything about languages and linguistics. I always thought it was fascinating to teach someone to speak another language, so that's why I decided to become an English teacher. I got my Master of Arts in English Language and Literature back in my home country, Ukraine. In Ukraine, this diploma would give me an opportunity to teach English as a subject in a K-12 system, or at a private school, mostly to children or young adults. But it happened so that I immigrated to Canada right after my graduation. And of course, the teaching environment as well as learners and their needs in Canada were different from what my training had prepared me for. So to get a taste of teaching in a new context, I started volunteering at an immigrant center here in Winnipeg. And soon after, I found my first teaching job at English Online. At that same time, I also pursued my TESOL certification through the University of Winnipeg. I'm still relatively new to this profession, so I can't say I'm an expert in planning, but I've been learning along the way. When I first started, my planning was what I call from lesson to lesson. I was mostly concerned about delivering a lesson that would fit in a given time frame, and I would fill it up with the activities that were on a given topic, but I had a very vague idea of what I wanted my learners to learn or how to measure their progress. So I started to look at planning more holistically and more deductively, and instead of moving from individual lessons to a bigger unit, I would look from top to bottom. I would identify the learning outcomes that I wanted my learners to achieve by the end of the course or term. To give you a little bit of context, the approach we use in Link Home Study program is task-based. This means that learners work on mastering specific language tasks or communicative acts. An example of such communicative act could be inviting someone to lunch or giving directions to someone's home or business. Such tasks are aligned with the Link Home Study curriculum, and they are based on CLB levels. So when a student, for example, starts in the program, they might be at, let's say, CLB level 5 in speaking, and they want to move to CLB level 6. So typically over 6 months, we work with them to cover 4 areas of communicative competencies for the target level. Those communicative competencies are interacting with others, giving or following instructions, getting things done, and sharing information. So now each of these 4 competencies will have students to work on 3 to 4 language tasks. When it comes to individual lessons, I work with one of those language tasks at a time, and I place it at the core of my lesson plan, and then I break it down into language skills that I want my learners to to learn in order to complete the task. So if you look again at the example of inviting someone to lunch, what you want your students to be able to do is you want them to be able to open and maintain and close a conversation. You want them to have the vocabulary and functional language to be able to extend an invitation. You also want them to be able to know how to respond if somebody accepts or declines their invitation, and so on. So now, once you've broken down your language task into specific skills, you want to think of the activities you will incorporate in your lesson plan that will enable your students to learn, practice, and then use those skills in real life. When you teach your lessons, you always want to find balance between accuracy and fluency. Over time, you will learn not to get sidetracked by small mistakes that your learners are making, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter for their level. Let's say if they use all of the prepositions or articles correctly, or if they are able to confidently express their health concerns to a doctor. And to answer this question, you need to go back to your learning outcomes and see if that was the goal for your lessons. Language is not tangible. It's fluid and it's very difficult to measure. That's why planning is very important, because it will allow you and your students to see that you moved from one point to another. There is a second part to planning, it's reflection. I always go over my lesson plans to see if my learners were challenged and motivated enough to do the tasks. I see what changes I can make to make this plan more effective next time I have to use it. And I'm also open to my students' feedback. Even if the lesson didn't go well, I can still learn from my mistakes. I won't exaggerate if I say that planning is at the core of teaching. Any good lesson, as well as a program as a whole, starts with thorough planning. You might feel like it takes a lot of your time, but in the long term, it will actually save you time. It takes time to create yourself as a teacher, probably all your career. One can improve in planning in many ways, but if I were to share one tip with you, let it be this one. Always allow for communication channels with your students and be open with them about program expectations and your expectations as an instructor. How can you promote open communication? First, start with a needs assessment and identify your students' strengths and areas for improvement, and then create a learning plan so that your students know what they need to do in order to improve. When you place your students at the center of the learning process, and when they are informed about lesson planning and instruction, they have more chances to succeed.